guys catch WrestleMania last week? Or was it Sunday? I had a couple of thoughts, and the only reason I would bring WrestleMania, I realize that product is crap. I'm well aware. I'm well aware of how painful it is to have to sit there for 7 hours and watch adults come out as though they're video game characters or cartoon. They're wearing masks. Some of them got paint on their face. Right? It's embarrassing. I get it. But it's also relevant to us in some ways because we had two of our own. We had Brock Lesnar open the show. We had Ronda Rousey close the show. And I think that you guys might find that interesting because I also think there's a couple of storylines there. Allow me to condescend to you. I'm going to speak to you guys. I know I just said, did you guys see it? But I don't know what your answer is. I couldn't hear what you said. Allow me to condescend to you for any of you that might have missed it. Let me start at the beginning. The show starts, okay, pay-per-view, and Brock comes out. Brock's the world champion, and Brock comes out first. So you assume as the viewer that he's coming out to cut a promo. He's going to build his fight that's coming up later in the night. But then you notice, he's not wearing a t-shirt, and he kind of looks ready, and he's got a sweat going, and all of a sudden, I'm watching it with Joel, and all of a sudden we're going, hey, wait a minute, I think Brock's about to wrestle. So Paul Heyman takes the microphone. This is great. Anytime they reveal a fourth curtain in wrestling, anytime they give a nod to us smart marks out there, it's very fun. Paul Heyman comes out and he says, I want to get the quote right. Paul Heyman says, if we're not going to be the main event, then let's just come out now and get this over with so I can take my client to Vegas where he will be ultimately respected. So, okay, you get it. Vegas, the UFC, Lesnar's on his way out, ultimately. I thought it was great. I thought it was a lot of fun. And I also thought it was a really smart and good way for Brock Lesnar's advocate, Paul Heyman. Brock owes Paul Heyman a thank you for this, by the way, which I'm sure Brock is smart enough to know and has given him. But this was a tremendous covering of what was about to happen, which was a 3 to 4 minute squash match where Seth Rollins pinned Brock Lesnar clean. Okay? Now, you guys also have to understand, if you're not wrestling fans, the relevance to a clean pinfall. If you want to do a screw job finish where somebody comes out and gets hit with a chair, or the referee's not looking and the brass knuckles come in, or there's a double team or cheating, or the holding of the ropes, or the holding of the tights, something along these lines that would be known as a screw job finish, that helps to protect the person who loses. So the audience can then say, yes, he lost, but the other person was outside of the rules and they cheated. The company achieves their goal to try somebody else out as champion, but the champion who gets defeated, it doesn't even have to be a championship match, but the wrestler that gets defeated doesn't lose very much shine. Sets up for a rematch, sets up for a lot of things. When there is a clean pinfall, and to put this for perspective for you, in 1999, Hulk Hogan had only been pinned clean 3 times. In his entire career, he had only been pinned clean 3 times. The other relevance to 1999 is essentially when Hulk Hogan quit wrestling. And before anybody pushes back and goes, well, he's still wrestling. I get it. I'm well aware that he did many matches, but he used to be up every single night on TV. Then he was taking the roads and doing house shows. Then he was coming back for pay-per-view. He used to have an extremely full schedule. So basically, for the balance of his entire career, he was pinned clean 3 times. One was Andre the Giant. The final one was Bill Goldberg. I don't know who sat in between. Was it Ultimate Warrior? That's exactly what, boom, I just nailed him for you. So the relevance, it doesn't happen very often to the top guys. And Brock is certainly a top guy. Not only did he get pinned clean, it was what we call a squash match, meaning there wasn't even hope spots. He didn't come out and, he got the big slam and he gets his ass kicked. They did everything they could to send him out on a bad note. And they did everything they could to pass that torch to Seth Rollins. That's the business. They did absolutely nothing wrong. What I'm saying is, from a psychological standpoint, for Paul Heyman to go out there and essentially call that early, essentially say, we're about to do a job. So pin me, pay me, and let me get my client to the octagon. To essentially come out and say that was the best covering of the pending squash match that you could possibly do. And there's no way that Vince's writers told him to say that. Paul did what we call going into business for yourself. And in this case, he harmed himself. He went into business for Brock Lesnar, which is why I say Brock Lesnar owes Paul Heyman a thank you. Now, we move to the end of the night. our own Ronda Rousey, who, not for nothing, but has done an outstanding job over there. And not only her, I gotta spread the love a little bit around her family, because her husband Travis Brown is doing an outstanding job as well. Travis just gets it on the looks. I don't know if he can wrestle yet. We haven't seen him wrestle. But I'm just telling you, the looks, making you buy the emotion, making you buy into the intensity, making you buy into the anger. Knowing where the cameras are and taking it all the way to the back and getting into that character. He is a natural at the highest of levels. At the highest of levels, Travis Brown is a natural. Ronda is great. And Ronda was fast. And Ronda was a fit. I wouldn't call her a natural. I don't think so. I think Ronda Rousey's had to work for everything she's ever got in this life. I think she deserves the credit for that. I want her to have the credit for that because she deserves it. There was something interesting that happened that involves Travis Brown. Bret the Hitman Hart, night before WrestleMania, is doing something they call the Hall of Fame for the WrestleMania. He's being inducted. And some fan who actually, again, ties back to us because he was an amateur mixed martial artist, which is with a 2-1 record, he interrupts Bret's speech. Now, this was a crime. This is not part of the show. This guy committed a crime. He went into the ring and then he attacked Bret Hart. I have no idea why. I have no idea what the payoff would be. But I just know that it was very real. One, because they beat the hell out of this guy, starting with none other than Travis Brown, first one on the scene. Travis was just there watching it. He sees something fugazi happens. He jumps in. A number of other people did too, if you guys happen to see that. The other reason why I do not believe it was a work, meaning that Bret Hart, and it certainly would have been on the WWE. The only one that could have done it, again, going into business for himself, would have been Bret Hart to bring in a plant, have this guy come and attack him and make all sorts of attention. Bret Hart is way too arrogant to do that, just for the record. Way too arrogant. He would never do that. And he went down like a bag of dirt to a bum kid, to a bum 21-year-old kid. So there just simply would have been no payoff. It just made no sense. But I did think that it was very interesting. I also thought our own Travis Brown deserves a little credit there for his quick reactions. But I also thought it was just a really weird moment. Why did you attack Bret Hart? Well, what would have Bret Hart ever done? The other side of the coin is he was probably getting ready to bore us all up for about 45 minutes like Mr. T did a couple of years ago before the big red machine Kane had to walk out and tell him his 15 minutes is up. Okay, so main event time. Out comes Ronda. And Ronda, now you have to understand this, because what is the most fun thing to do about WrestleMania? It damn sure isn't the wrestling. As a matter of fact, the worst part of WrestleMania is the wrestling. The most fun is try to predict the outcome. And there are some rules at WrestleMania, but they are not absolutes. By example, in the wrestling business, they will always give you what you want, but they will not give you what you expect. And that statement is never more true than the finish, the outcome of the main event of WrestleMania. That is not an absolute. Sometimes you know full well going in what's going to happen. You can still enjoy it and you still want to see it. The best WrestleManias, there's always a swerve. And the way this main event was set up, we knew that there was going to be a swerve on some level because it was a triple threat match. It was the women, females were headlining WrestleMania. Relevant, very relevant to the story because it's the first time that it ever happened. They got a lot of media, they got a lot of traction out of this. But also, you know, okay, we're going to see something here and it's going to be something fun. It's going to be really hard to predict. Now, who's going over at WrestleMania? Whoever the fans want to go over. Whoever is the most popular person and is the biggest draw is going over. Never an enhancement talent. Never the B-side and never a jobber. Ever. It is always whoever is most popular and who the fans want. Because the first rule of give them what they want but not what they expect, the first rule in that is you give them what they want. So, but there was still a big question. Who is more popular? Is it Ronda Rousey or is it Becky Lynch? I didn't know the answer. I asked people in the business. They said, I don't know. They said, it's really close. It was Ronda, but the honeymoon is now over for Ronda. And Becky's coming on strong. They said, but I don't know the answer. I don't know. That's still Ronda. And she still has a high level of fame, but the gap is closing. I asked that in December, the very end of December of last year. Said, man, the gap is closing. Becky's coming after. The honeymoon's over. All of those things I just said were exact quotes. So then you also insert Charlotte Flair. And the biggest thing with Charlotte Flair is everybody's just looking around. What are you doing here? What is Charlotte Flair doing in this thing? So they bring Charlotte Flair in. Now, don't forget, whoever walks out last, that is a big tip of the hat. That is a big tip of the hat of who the star is. The star comes out last, and everybody knows that rule. So Charlotte Flair, who happens to be the champion, comes in first. Okay, great. We can take her off the board. We can take her off the board with one caveat, that if you want to follow the second rule of the two rules, and the only two rules that they're following of give the fans what they want, but never what they're expected, it does satisfy rule number 2, which is we most certainly would not expect Charlotte Flair to get a win over Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey, of which she can do at the same time. We wouldn't expect that. So they bring Charlotte in first, and they bring her in a helicopter, which was a relatively cool entrance. But you can also see by her body language, she's about to do the J.O.B. It was obvious. She wasn't even a team player about it. There was no intensity, there was no happiness, there was no excitement. That was the look of a woman that was getting a paycheck and was about to go out and do the job. Okay, great, she's off the board. But now we're going to get to where it's really interesting. Because now they're going to play somebody's music, and that person is going to now walk out, which means whoever's music they don't play, just like Miss America, whoever's name they don't say, is now the A-side. Boom. Ronda walks. That was interesting for me. I didn't like it because I was cheering for Ronda. I didn't like it. It made me go, darn it. But now we know Becky is coming out last. So now you've got your biggest prediction and your biggest guest of who will, not only who's walking to the ring last, who's going to leave the building last, meaning they're leaving with the championship. And basically, I thought it was a good match. I think it was a really hard match, though. You know, I've heard wrestlers say their least favorite match to do is a battle royal. The fans love it, but you have no idea what you're doing. You can't call any spots, and you're just in there just with a melee for a half hour or so until everybody goes over the ropes. And it's like, well, yeah, as I watch it as a fan, that's kind of what it looks like. It looks like a disorganized mess. It's like, yeah, it is. That's not what we trained for. We're trained to be in the ring with 20 other people. It's a one-off. It's a twice-off in an entire career. We don't know what we're doing. Okay, great. Because I would say the same thing goes for a triple threat match. I realized there were some botched spots, and I realized it wasn't fantastic action in there, but it's also not what they train for. I mean, in their defense, that's not what they train for. That is not what they do. That's not a normal match. It was a special match. Now, with that said, I am being critical. I thought it was a good match. I just understand that if you would have done that three-way dance with a pairing, any which way you want, you would have had a much better and cleaner and clearer match. Ultimately, Becky went over. Rolled Ronda up, pinned her 1, 2, 3. They tried to put a little something on it at the end, and I couldn't tell if that was within the script or if that's just the way that it organically played out. But the little something was that Ronda's shoulder got up before the 3 count came down. The announcers began to talk about it. Again, I was watching it with Joel, so it made Joel and I get involved. We're looking at each other, go, oh my gosh, her shoulder was up. We thought this was going to be a storyline they were going to expand upon. And there was way back, I can't remember the year, it was roughly 87, maybe as late as 89. Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant. And the referee brought his hand down for a 3 count, and Hogan got his shoulder up, and I'm convinced to this day that was on accident, that it just worked out that way, but I've also seen that tape 20 to 30 times, and I do not know if that shoulder was up in time or if it wasn't. It was like magic, the way the referee's hand came down as Hogan's shoulder came up. So the WWE built that into a storyline and rematched those guys. But they used that specific story. Oh my gosh, Andre the Giant pinned Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, who never loses, who never gets, he should have been pinned. He should have been called out that night. They used it, and it looked as though they were bringing back that same storyline. The way that Ronda's shoulder came up and did appear. This one was a little bit more obvious than the Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant. Ronda's shoulder was just straight up. I think that was on accident. And I think the Hogan-Andre one was on accident. They just had it in their favor. But I think the Ronda one was on accident, that her shoulder came up. The referee knew it's time to go home, and I gotta make the pinfall. When that happens and it's caught on cameras, to honor kayfabe, the announcers must address it, which they did, but then they quickly got off of it. Which is why I tell you, speculating, I'm a mark. I enjoyed it. I'm a mark, but I think you guys are marks, so let's have a little fun with it. I think that just happened. I think it was just the way they went down, the way the ref counted. I think there was a little bit of momentum, and Ronda ended up getting off her back before that count came down. I don't think that was a built-in storyline. I also don't think it was done to cover Ronda. We've heard rumors, I should call them reports, that Ronda's going to leave the WWE, and I don't mean she's done wrestling. She's going to take a break of some level. And I don't know if that's 2 months or if that's a year, but I don't know. But she's going to leave for some level. And one thing about that business, much like MMA, we just don't experience as much because fighters are asked to compete 3 times a year. Wrestlers who are asked to compete on television 52 times in a 52-week calendar year, it goes really fast. If you are not on TV, if you are not on that microphone, if you are not out in front of people, and you do not remind them week after week after week why you belong there, why you're great at it, the storylines go fast, and new stars are given opportunity, and new people step into the place. The reason I offer you all of that in conjunction with the finish of the Ronda match, if she is in fact leaving, and I just told you guys, I don't know if it's for 2 months or if it's for a year or for 2 years for all I know. Either way, if you're leaving, the same with Brock Lesnar, who we know will be back, and we've even got a pretty good time frame of when he will be back. You saw how he got treated. He had to jerk the curtain for Seth Rollins in a squash match where he got jobbed out and lost the title in under 4 minutes. So they're not going to cover Ronda, who's gone for X amount of time, if those rumors are true, by putting a swerve finish. I think it just happened. I think the referee physically was trying to count 3. I think the man was trying to hold her down. I think Ronda had momentum and her shoulder came up.